Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of JKL Media. Jesse, Karen, and Lou, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Karen
Hello, everyone.
and Jesse,
Hello.
and we're here talking the English. And this is a 6-episode series, and we're on the final episode of discussion, and we're talking episodes 5, The Buffalo Gun, and episode 6, Cherished. And when we left off in episode 4, we had some major reveals which subverted our expectations to a large degree, I think, and recontextualized everything that we had seen before. And episode 5 and 6 continue to do that even to an even greater degree. So there's a reveal in this episode 5 that we'll talk about first that I think may be a flashpoint for some people. Some people might get turned off, and I wouldn't be surprised if some people actually stopped watching. But I think we'll find out talking with my co-host what we thought of that particular scene, and I hope they both know the scene I'm talking about because we haven't discussed it beforehand. But before we get into the episode 5 and 6 discussions, I just want to get quick, and I emphasize quick thoughts on these last 2 episodes, and without any warning of who it's going to be, I'm going to go with Karen.
Okay. I love shows that surprise me. And while they were sad surprises, I very much enjoyed this series. I think it was worth it, even if it was just for the acting and the expanse of beauty in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the story was also brilliantly told. It evolved very easily, and it's like Jesse said before we were talking here on mic, it was like 6 episodes, so it was quick and it unfolded very well.
Mm-hmm. Jesse.
I loved the way this story ended as much as I hated it. This is totally not what I thought this series would be. I did not expect this to be. It gave us, we ended up getting our road trip. We ended up getting our cross, Romeo, Juliet, different universe lovers. And we ultimately a tragic yet happy ending.
Very good. Just as an aside, Jesse, is your mic plugged in properly? Or something? You're sounding a little raw at times. I don't know if it's
all right, let me double check.
Or maybe you got you too close to your mouth or too far away. I don't know.
Okay, I'll play with it.
That sounds better already. I don't know.
Okay, sounds better. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I double checked to make sure my USB was plugged in all the way. All right.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Now you will have to edit this one.
Yeah, that's all right. I should mark that on the timestamp. 9 minutes. 9:48. So then I won't have to go search at 9:48. Okay. All right. So maybe this is bad form, but I'm going to ask you both. There's a certain moment in the episode where I'm going, what the hell? And I'm wondering if that's the same moment for both of you. And do you guys have any idea of the moment I'm talking about in the episode?
One of the things where I said, what the hell, was why she didn't sleep with Eli.
Right.
But I'm not sure that's the scene you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the scene. That is the moment, because without knowing her full backstory, when that moment happens, when they're kissing, and then she says, "I can't," my initial thought was, is it because he's an Indian or Native American? So I thought, no, they're not going to go there, are they? So what we find out is later is actually even, well, I wouldn't say worse, but it's
worse.
It's an unexpected turn that helped recontextualize that particular moment for me. And going, oh, okay, that makes sense. She was actually doing it to protect him. So
yeah, it did that with many moments.
Oh, okay.
You could look back and say, well, that's what she meant by he was killed slow and fast.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things kind of worked into that, why he died, why she's blaming someone for his death.
Mm-hmm.
I really do think that moment was kind of another, there's many turning points in this,
Mhm.
but for that episode, I think it was the main point that kind of clued me in that something big was happening.
Right.
Because she's not a virgin.
Mhm.
We know she's had a child. So there's not that kind of, you know,
Mhm.
she'll be shunned because she was a virgin. But you know, it was just something that I was like, okay, why? Because I really want them to get together.
Right.
So yeah, that's the scene I was thinking of.
Okay. How about you, Jesse?
Yeah, this explains so much. Like, I was really surprised. Why did the guy kill his wife?
Mhm.
Why did he kill himself?
Yep.
Like, if he was just guilty about his part of the massacre,
Right.
why would he punish her?
Mhm.
Right? And so this explaining, and you know, in my mind, based on this time period, there is not a solution.
Right.
There isn't a shot or a pill you can take.
Mhm.
And the tragedy of this was so so realistic. In other words, this is of the time.
Yeah.
I just listened to I rediscovered Cocaine and Rhinestones, the absolutely wonderful podcast by Tyler May and Co., which is a history of modern country music.
Okay.
And he talked, and he was complaining because his whole second season was basically the story of George Jones and Tammy Wynette. I promise I'll get to a point. I'm just not rambling. And he talked about that he was complaining about Showtime's miniseries because he says you can change details and you'll still make it accurate. He says, for example, Deadwood, they never would have used the actual language they used in the TV show.
Right.
They would not have used CS or these other cuss words because back then it would have sounded like you said to me, Sam, darn blang it, would be incredibly profane to them, but it would have come across as funny. So therefore you use modern language to put what is a historical truth.
Right.
The idea that this is of the time, and we never talk about, oh, I go visit the lady on the other side of the track, and you never deal with the consequences. On this, you very much deal with these consequences.
Right.
Shocking, yet so well done.
A very good show versus tell example.
Yes.
What was your immediate reaction when she broke off the kiss?
I was surprised. And then I was also, I didn't understand why she seemed to be trying to cleanse herself with dirt. Right? Like I understood if she had gone to a river and trying to, you know, but this, how does she, you could tell she's trying to punish herself. She's trying to, you know, cleanse herself, but you don't understand why.
I would say it's more, she feels dirty. So she's going to make herself dirty.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Very good. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah. One of the interesting clues that is a visual clue that you don't really catch until it's pointed out is she's always wearing gloves, right? So that was when that happened, that was like, oh, okay. That was a nice reveal as well. And we're dancing around it, so we might as well talk about it. She has a venereal disease, syphilis specifically, and back in those times, as Jesse just pointed out, there's no cure for it. So the physical scarring that ensues because of that is first apparent on the hands, and we saw that in the previous episode. They called it cowpox, but it was actually syphilis. So the episode Buffalo Gun turns conventions on its heads quite a bit, because the expectations here is that we meet another character, and she's quite she's quite the character, Black-Eyed Mog, and she's a survivor of an Indian massacre. She she's been scalped and had her eyelids removed. So that makes for a very stark visual every time she takes off her glasses. And the expectation is that Eli will go and kill her, but that's not what happens. So what did you think of that, Jesse? What did you think of that whole sequence with it being Cornelia instead of Eli that vanquishes the bad person?
So I did love that we had seen her earlier and she decided not to attack them, right?
Right.
Because it wasn't worth it, which comes back to haunt her. I was happy because it feels like Cornelius is learning how to live in this world, right? She is understanding. The last time we talked about this, I said I had a sense of dread, that I was always worried about our characters. This time I still had that underpining feeling, but I also felt like she has learned how to take care of herself. She has learned how to live in this world. I think that the world we've set this in is very violent, and she has learned, like, I was very excited, not that I love death, but the idea that she tries to talk about this and then just says, no, no, no. I'm Cornelia shot first, Han shot first. This was, oh yeah, by the way, you're a bad person. Boom, and then kills her sons. I was glad to see our heroine, our hero, seem to understand what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a continuation of that other scene in the last episode where Cornelia is a badass, where she's got her gun and she's pointing it at someone and she doesn't care if they die. And also in the main context of the reveal that she has syphilis, it makes a little more sense too, that she got nothing to lose.
Right.
If she confronts these people, big deal. If she gets hurt or killed, so what? And she does get hurt. She gets a scratch that gets infected, but to her, it's like, don't worry about it. Doesn't matter. I did appreciate that once Mog told her that her sons were gonna use her, she decided, okay, they're not worth saving either. So I'm gonna go out and take them out as well. I was surprised that she died so quickly in the series. We only see her twice. But then after seeing the whole thing, I was like, okay, it's a good plot point, but we didn't need to see more of it.
Right.
So I really like that storyline. The fact that it was, quick. It was almost a one and done kind of thing. And it made sense and it gave a little more context to the overarching story.
Yeah. And so that part of the episode is dispatched with, and then we finally get the Eli and Cornelia are reunited, and then as Jesse mentioned off the top, we get our road trip, and the conversations that they had were just wonderful. And like you mentioned, Karen, the slow death versus the long death, and then all those discussions that they had, and talking about their ancestors being up on the stars and what the messages were, and if we just could understand it. So going back to you, Karen, what did you think about all that stuff?
Yeah, again, I love that it was all put into context. And I think she fell in love with him the only way she could. I think that her sacrifices showed the difference between what is good and what is bad. Melmont just didn't give a crap who he gave his disease to. He was evil, and you see that, and the stark differences between Cornelia, who also has the same disease, opposed to Melmont, who's like, I'm going to satisfy myself and I don't give a crap if I give it to you or not. It was a big deal, and I loved seeing her have her strength through her weakness. I think that was a big part of her storyline. And again, it was super bittersweet. The whole, that she was definitely in love with Eli, and I think Eli also was in love with her. And it's sad that they never were able to get together, because the disease that she has, they didn't use penicillin until like the 20s and 30s, the 1920s and 30s, which is a full like 40 years past this time period. So there's really nothing to cure it. You have a death sentence when you have a venereal disease of any sort. And that it just shows how strong women can be when there is a lot stacked against them.
Right.
According to Mr. Google, penicillin was invented in 1928. I just had to look it up. So yes, that was my first thought too. Like, oh, there is no penicillin. And
I mean, used as a cure, yes.
Right.
Penicillin has always existed, but
it is very sad. And she wanted him to have a good life, and she knew that she has no idea how long she is going to live. It turns out she does live a fair amount of time, and I did do what you suggested, Lou. I went back to the very first episode and watched the beginning, and they show you her trophy room. They show her narration talking about the stars, and it does give you a melancholy, I guess, this very sad, foreshadowing that on rewatch, understand even more.
Right.
So yeah, this was our two heroes, such a complex journey. And she does, Karen mentioned a lot about how she respected other people, right? She cared about not passing this on to other people. And she also did good, right? With the young child she saved, and giving him, and that great scene of, I want a picture of, that's my only repayment. And that picture of her and Eli, where she moves her head and you get that, it just so artistically and creatively a really strong story.
Right.
Yeah. And in the Buffalo Gun as well, there were several points that show women are really strong, because we get the maid, quote unquote, the mother of Touching Ground. I mean, she sacrifices herself for her son, knowing that Eli and Cornelia are going to take care of him. And it's just really powerful. She makes sure that they get away, but in doing so, she is executed. So I just thought it was cool to see women being strong in their weakness.
Right. And we see that with the rancher, Martha Myers, who we're kind of wondering, why are we getting this character so much time? And we find out that her life too, well, her life is really a parallel of Cornelia's, but her outcome, just by the fate or the grace of God, has turned out to be okay. So that was quite well done as well. So I thought I really like that inclusion of that parallel storyline. I thought that was quite clever. And then we also get back to near the end of the episode. We meet the character who is the title of the episode, this Major McKay, who is taking in Indians and teaching them how to be more American. And I thought this was really well played as well. The inclusion of Touching Ground, who was at the massacre, and has her son with her as well. is quite well done. And that image of that guy, that Major McKay's getting on top of his little tower and shooting with that buffalo gun was very, like you said, Jesse, it always makes you feel like you can't relax here. It's a beautiful countryside, but it's very dangerous. So why don't you pick up on that and what you thought of those sequences?
So I love the idea, right, that he's, the way he's lying down, right, and using his feet to hold this, and using the sights, once again, serpentine shell, and I, he's just evil.
Yeah.
And even the idea that I'm going to save these people by teaching them how to be, in my words, not his, human, right? Like, versus saying, oh, wait a minute, this is, everyone has a unique, and the idea, and, the more you learn about this history of this country, the way the colonization did is nothing to be proud of. And to see this kind of played out so well is just really interesting. And I love seeing that his mother does the war cry and lets them escape, kills them both. And this is a violent society. We keep talking about that, but this is this world this series is set in. And I'm sure there's places in the West where you go your whole life, you settled, you raised your crops, and you had, while you probably died at 43 because of health, but there wasn't all this murder. But the world that we're in this is just, I loved it. I loved everything about this series.
Yeah. So that wraps up everything I had for that episode. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to mention that hasn't come up?
Well, I want to correct myself.
Okay.
Touching Ground was the maid, and her son was White Moon.
Right.
So I'm sorry about that. I did like that he's called White Moon, and Eli's the wolf. And we get that, kind of
imagery. Yeah.
Right. Which is awesome, I think.
Yeah. Right. So then we get to episode 6, Cherished. And at the conclusion of the previous episode, Cornelia has fainted, and they have taken in the Indian boy. And so that's the start of the next episode. And it's here where the revelations come fast and furious. So Karen, why don't you pick up on how that went with the scene with the doctor and the realization that this was not going to be your happily ever after story.
Yeah, the scene with the doctor I thought was really good. In the last episode, we see that her money finally comes in handy. They use it to stop the bullets from hitting them. But in this episode, we get kind of a wrap up to that. She donates her money to this doctor in order to, help with whatever his endeavors are in the future. And he's also very caring towards her, where you can see a little bit of the mercenary in him. He sees, he diagnoses her with syphilis, even though she knows she has it. And he is very caring. He doesn't chastise her for it. He doesn't, he doesn't.
Judge.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And that was the big reveal for me and this was, I think, the first time we really get how sick she is. There was before that, there was that kind of, is she going to die from this wound thing? And it's like, well, who cares? When you learn about what she has, that she has syphilis, and the fact that being hurt reveals the fact that she's dying. And that's why she didn't want to do anything about her wound. She didn't want Eli to see any part of her that might be damaged. She didn't want him to treat her any differently. And I think that, you know, just that one scene and learning she has syphilis was, you know, it had ramifications through the whole series. You could go back through the whole series and see why she made the choices she made, you know, why she came to America, why she had all that money, why, you know, just everything. All the conversations with Eli made 100% sense now. And it was, I just thought it was fantastic. Just that part, at least. And I love also that the money she gives the doctor ends up being something that she sees at the end of the episode. That she sees this Wild West traveling show in England. I also want to say how much I appreciate that they include things that really happened. There were really these Indian repatriating schools in the US and Canada. And there, you know, the syphilis thing was exactly the same. They couldn't be cured. The way people looked at Native Americans, the people, their attitudes, I mean, it was all very real. So, I mean, that was a big part of seeing the end of this episode was, you know, learning that all the things came to a head, things get tied together, and it was very rooted in real life. Even, you know, Trafford taking his herd up to Canada because it's safer. He's not gonna have all these things to deal with Hoxham and all that. You know, you learn why he settled there, and the fact that that town was built on the massacre grounds. That, you know, he had the audacity to go back there and build a whole town on top of the skeletons of his past. So, I mean, it had so much impact. I was sobbing at the end of this episode. So I really appreciated the whole thing.
Okay. Jesse.
Yeah, I loved the sheriff. Like, okay, this is how we got to play this out. And like him keep going, okay, come on, we got to go. Like, okay, we go. Because he understood that even though we know that, you know, McClintock is the villain, right?
Belmont, right?
Yeah, Belmont. Yeah, Belmont. The community doesn't. Right, he is the hero. He's you know, they all work. They either work for him, they support him, and his arrogance was so strong, and for her to share that, and the sheriff try to do the right things, like, okay, we're going to do this, was just a very satisfying ending, and the idea that the young child that she helped, you know, he had a good life. He seemed happy. He seemed enjoying, and he thanks her, and he, you know, isn't afraid to look at her and see her and thank her, and it just makes for, as I said earlier, a very sad, yet in its own way, a happy ending. You assume that somehow that our hero, you know, went off and had a good life. You know, somehow another he was. And
I feel like part of that is, I'll let you talk more. I mean, I'm sorry.
No, please.
I want to interject here. part of it was she felt like she failed her son.
Right.
So the fact that he's gone now, she can't go back and correct that, but she can give this boy the life that she wanted for her son.
Yeah, in other words, she was able to give this young man what she couldn't.
Right.
I also love her idea. I in a lot of ways, it's very sad that Thomas dies off screen, right?
Mhm.
And we never see them interact. But the idea, we could have had a life. We could have, and we turn out that he was a good person. Maybe not a great businessman at times, but he talked about that. I've lived, I've won and lost fortunes. It is, she gets her revenge, but it's the only happy ending she can get, is by giving this young man a life and knowing that she gives Eli the chance to go and have a life somewhere, whether it's alone, whether he finds, he's already lost one family, right?
Yep.
But whatever he does, she does all she can to let him go back and have the best life he can. And then she goes back to England and does the same thing for herself.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, because this is a 6-episode limited series, I think the tying up of these threads really works well within this format, because if this is something you would have dragged over like a 22-episode season, I think the impact of all these decisions would have been lost or diminished. But this short episode run really works in the favor of this story. There's there's so many threads to pick up here. And it even has kind of a No Country with Old Men moment when you mentioned like Trafford dies off screen, and when the guy said that he drowned, I said no, he didn't drown. He's going to still show up, but no, the rest of the episode keeps playing, and once again the series subverts expectations. So I thought that was quite well done as well. With the moving of her head during the photograph, so that it's blurred like that, it's funny. I found it funny that they're standing in front of a background when the real background behind them is so beautiful.
It's better, yeah.
But maybe that's a limitation of the camera. I don't know. Maybe it can't. Everything would be a blur if it was too far away. I don't know. But I found that kind of funny. That's superimposing. Even back then, they were superimposing a idealized version of the West on the real West, I guess you could say. So I thought that was a really great moment. And one of the big things too that we found out is that Melmont got his syphilis after the raid when he visited the
Black Widow.
The Black Widow. And intentional or not, the imagery of that Black Widow in that black gown and veil, and Cornelia having the same dress, to me was really striking. How did that strike you, Karen? Did you like that, or
no? I did.
What do you think they were trying to prove there?
Well, I think a lot of that was we didn't want to see our heroine that way, and this is the way that they could show us, what was going on with her body, and that was like, that's what she has to look forward to.
Right.
So I think that was a very well used scene, and it also reinforced the fact that that, again, this world is dangerous, things happen, and you can't be cured, and the only way she could make money was to charge people to come and see the freak, quote unquote. And again, I think it's just a way for us to see what Cornelia may have looked like in that last scene without actually showing us.
Right. How did that strike you, Jesse?
Yeah, I think Karen has it right. And this is, I think I after the fact, I went and read a few write-ups and reviews of this, and one critic did not think, they thought they rushed the ending, that they did not think there was a payoff. I felt totally the opposite. I felt like there was enough of a story. They wrapped up enough of the loose ends, like to explain, was it Martha Myers, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, why is she healthy? Why is her son okay? Well, because there are times when it is dormant. And so she gets a quote unquote happy ending. Her son being so angry and mad at what a horrible person his father was. I liked how everything wrapped up, and this, in fact, I take it this is not based on a novel or anything.
No.
Because I think this would make a very good quote unquote adult Western. This would be a very, like, if this had been written by Elmer Leonard or Louis L'Amour or Zane Grey, but in a different event, it was really well done.
Yeah. And the final confrontation is interesting too, because Melmont is, he's the guy's got street jungle cred, survival instinct. So he knows what drives people. We saw him, how he was, was dueling with Trafford and, cutting across their class differences and bringing him down to his level and even putting him in his place. And then here with his confrontation with Cornelia, he puts her gun in his mouth and says, "You can't shoot me because part of me is part of your son." And I thought that, again, the imagery and the character, all the character stuff that's going on was really quite well done. How did you like how that played out, Jesse?
I liked it a lot. I love the arrogance. Like, he feels like he is, even though he has syphilis, even though he feels that he is immortal, that you can't touch me.
Right.
Oh, sorry. And he is, and that arrogance of, because he has gotten away with so much, and to have that ultimately, he gets his just desserts. From my perspective, I wanted him to die. I wanted him to get the justice he deserved. I was happy for that. It is, she gets her revenge, and because you're wondering the whole time, how did he kill her son? What do you mean by this? And then to understand that her son was born with a death sentence because of this man. Not only did he rape her, but he raped her knowing he was sick. And took her money. He raped her physically, he raped her mentally, he raped her financially. And to see him not worrying about it, he was a very, I won't say he's, we talked about last time the twirling mustache, but he also was a very complex villain. And to see him get what he deserved was very satisfying.
Karen?
I kind of like that it was Eli that killed her, because that would have scarred her more to lose that part of her son out in the world or whatever, even though she hated him and he was just the worst. But that's how Eli showed how much he loved her, I think.
Yes.
We can't show it physically. We won't be together, but you can't do this. I can. I'm going to do everything I can for you. And I thought that was very poignant. I also loved that Myers, the woman, and her son, they had that kind of unbreakable bond with Cornelia. where they went through the same thing. They were both raped by the same man, but she could see, yes, we have this bond, but you're going to be okay. Your son's going to be okay. Go and live your life. You know, she got to see that even through that adversity that she also had, someone's going to make it.
Right.
And I loved her realization that he didn't have syphilis when you and he had that encounter. So for some reason, I have come and said, hey, at least you don't have this death sentence. Although a lot of victims of sexual assault feel like they're worthless, I felt like Mrs. Myers, who wasn't really Mrs. Myers, they weren't married, but I feel like she had the best outcome that she could have. The dude that subjected her to being his wife was dead. The guy who raped her was dead. Her son was healthy. She was healthy. She had her cattle back.
Yep.
She could make a good life for herself. And I really love that. Again, it's showing women could face that adversity and come out the other side. And I mean, even Cornelia, who had this death sentence, you know, she won in the end. She didn't win, but, you know, she won a lot. She got a lot of her life back by going through all that.
Yeah, that's another bittersweet moment in a string of them, was Cornelia seeing that Martha's and her son were healthy and that she wasn't. So for her, in a, you know, beyond White Moon, this is kind of another, you know, surrogate scenario for her, where somebody else is going to be able to, you know, have a normal relationship with her son. And the other person, Martha, can see that she's, you know, she had some bad things happen to her, but she's much better off than Cornelia was. So there's just you know, there's a lot of subtext going on in there, and none of this is spoken out loud. You're just parsing this out in your head from the, you know, seeing how the characters are interacting. So I thought that was really well done. Now, one of the things that, because I watched this with my wife, and the sheriff's explanation as to what happened, and to, you know, to make it so that there wouldn't be a revolt, because as you pointed out, Karen, Melmont was well liked, and his employees would ride unless they, you know, because, you know, the Wild West hang 'em high kind of mentality. But it didn't really explain why Eli had to leave, at least not to me or my wife. Did either of you see why a reason as to why Eli can't be there? Was it just because he was an Indian and they would just naturally?
It would have been bad. And
that's the only thing?
I think some people might have blamed him anyway, even if it's just as a scapegoat.
Right.
And I think there's more of
up with too.
Right. I think there's more of a chance of something bad happening to him if he stayed there.
Right.
You know, it's an English settlement. It's not an Indian settlement.
Right. Right. And did you want to add anything to that, Jesse, or you
No, I'm good. I agree. I think that is, you know, he's trying to the best he can do, right? Like this is what he thinks is the decision. It is a little bit of like, well, really? But they could have been suspicious, right? By this way, kind of tying a bow into everything, you get this okay.
Yeah. I guess the main sticking point for me is I didn't really see why he had to leave from a story point of view, because it's pretty obvious by this point that the two of Eli and Cornelia cannot be together. So the forcing of him away seems like just an artificial attempt at adding some extra drama to that final scene between the two of them. So, but because it's whenever they part, that scene is going to be emotional, and they just decided to make it at that point.
Now, I have a question. And
sure.
since we're not medical experts, I mean, technically, couldn't they have been together, but just not sexually?
Well,
Well,
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
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 but
so
we didn't need to see all that.
yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
kissing and then pulling away is effective for us. And
yes, yeah,
I hate to bring the real world into it, but yeah.
yeah. So I mean,
it's more
um,
romantic that they part.
yes, it is. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but they could have lived a life together with no
Yeah,
physical contact or anything like that.
yeah.
Yeah, but they just decided it. She didn't know how long she had to live either, right? So
Exactly. That was the other thing. Yes. And
yeah,
and also, she's going back to her parent, her father's estate,
yeah,
where she has all the comforts, and she has the best of whatever medical
yeah. And
things
having
are there.
an Indian around at
Yeah,
that,
could have been
all the
odd.
time
Yes.
would have been rather
Yeah.
awkward.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
so she decided not to stay there.
I think she's also saving him from more loss.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and he still has a chance at making a life for himself as well.
Yep.
And whether he did or not is something that we never know, because he's never referenced again after they part. The only clue we get is like a decade later, in kind of what I like to think of as their Grey Haven's version of Lord of the Rings. We do get to see Cornelia a decade later, and how did you think that played out, Jesse?
I loved it. I loved that she, we've already talked about how she looks like the
Black Widow.
Black Widow. Her servants are taking care of her. She goes, knows she will be shunned, so she's staying in the shadows, but she has to see this young man, and he's drawn to her. And probably it's unrealistic that he knows who she is, but I love the fact that he knows who she is,
Mm-hmm.
and he gets a chance to tell her, "Thank you for my life."
Yeah.
And she gets to see, and we've already touched on this, and all this is, we're connecting the dots.
Right.
We are coloring the shading of, at least someone had a good life, right? She can picture the mother and the father in the West, the mother and the son going on and having a good life. Her surrogate son, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
I've enjoyed my life.
Yeah.
The money that she invested has made, him have, found a purpose, and he does look happy. You see him with his friends.
Yeah.
And the Wild West shows were incredibly inaccurate, but they were, it's show business though. He is found a way to, as a Native American, to enjoy life, and that's got to be satisfying for her.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, as I said at the very beginning, a sad, happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
And this is grown-up storytelling. I have been on the record. I love Hallmark Channel movies.
Mm-hmm.
I love romance novels. I love Walt Disney. I grew up watching Walt Disney, and there is nothing happier to me than more satisfying to me than getting a happy ending. I don't care how much we have to manipulate and do hand waves.
Right.
But this is so well done.
Mm-hmm.
Such a great story that you go, this is the right ending for this tale.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very satisfying conclusion.
I'm curious, did you watch this with your wife at all?
No, I didn't.
No, you should maybe do that.
Yeah.
Karen.
That was, the ending was chef's kiss. It was so good. I love seeing that White Moon is not only proud of being a Native American, but he's also living his life paying tribute to the people who saved him. He is playing Eli Whip in this traveling show, the man who saved his life. and the happiness he gets is because of Cornelia. So his whole life is because of these two people. And that was just fantastic. And I really love that this is a man who, again, doesn't judge at all. You know, he lifts the veil, even though she says, no, 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 you don't want to see me. He lifts the veil and kisses her. And again, I'm getting a little teary just thinking of it, but I love seeing her room, that she kept all these things close to her, that she got to see the fruits of what she sacrificed, that I just, even though she didn't get to see Eli again, she got to see part of his legacy.
Right.
And I loved it so much.
Yeah, that's that moment when White Moon lifts her veil and kisses her, and you don't see it, or you don't see her face during that scene, but I just love she just says the shame, and he says, but not for you. That just, that just, man, oh man.
I'm seriously getting choked up thinking about
it. I do have a little bit of tears too, thinking about that, you know, and I love that you mentioned that, Karen. He is celebrating the two people that, because his life could have gone a different way. And it is that way, and he is, and I think that is, he is viewing through his heart, not his eyes. And so there is no, for him, there's nothing to worry about this at all.
Yeah, she's beautiful no matter what.
Yes.
And again, it's hard for me to talk about it because it's just so touching. And
it is. It really is well done.
And it was a nice touch to actually show some actual footage from the Buffalo Bill's Wild West show at the end there, which lends an air of authenticity to the story that we've just seen. We know it's fictional, but it's just that it just makes it seem a little more realer, that this really could have happened. And because there's nothing fantastical about it, beyond some of the character heroics or whatever, but it was just a really nice touch. I do have a question for both of you, and I'll throw this to you first, Jesse. The one thing that I'm curious about is, like, I do feel that Cornelia got her redemption and was able to turn basically lemon into lemonade, a bunch of lemons into a bit of lemonade. But Eli really, to my mind, doesn't come out of this much better than when he came into the story. I mean, his relation, obviously he will cherish the moments that he had with Cornelia, but the things that he's done, those things are still there for him. How do you feel about where Eli ends up?
So if we watch this, he just wanted to go home. He'd served his time in the army. He wanted to go home. He wanted to go back. He had lost everything he had. And now he just wants to go back. So he gets what he wants now with with the idea of this added memory that he had. Because if she had not been involved, he would not have been able to go home. He would have been killed. He was going to be set up for a murder. There are too many other people wanting him. So I would have liked for her to slip him a little money, like, hey, but overall, I think the difference between what you need and what you want is what you can carry on a horse.
Right.
And he's carrying his life and his horse, and he is going to, and I would like to think that he ends up finding another life, whether he ends up finding a new companion or is just finds a tribe, and I mean that in the broadest terms, his own group of people where he can be a elder statesman, a virtual grandfather, uncle to other people to do that. That, in my mind, he feels that spending time with her has made his life better.
Mhm.
And and that way he always has the chance of looking in the stars and thinking of his beloved,
Okay.
whatever
Oh my God.
that word is, in his language.
Right. Karen,
I'm
you need a minute?
Are
thinking
you
about things.
verklempt? Are you verklempt?
Yeah, the part about looking in the stars and seeing her,
Yes.
that kind of gets me. Um, yeah, I would like to think that Eli, not taking a lesson from things, but carries the things that have happened to him through Cornelia through the rest of his life, that he's not afraid to love again, where,
Right.
he wanted to isolate himself from everyone because of all the loss he suffered. But he
Mhm.
realizes he can love again, and that part of his past isn't erased.
Mhm.
He still had that first wife, the first children, and that he learned what real sacrifice was. He was in the army, and I think he thought that that was his sacrifice.
Mhm.
But really, his sacrifice was much more than that.
Mhm.
He does lose everything, but he also has the ability to have this really good life afterwards. I would like to think that he goes on to have another wife and children and
Mhm.
all that kind of thing. I'm hoping that's true, especially since White Moon is playing him in this Wild West show. It kind of infers to me that that perhaps he's gone on to find more in his life. He's more famous.
Mhm.
That's what I would like to take from that. So, yeah, I'm super choked up about how their romance ended.
Mhm.
And he's just such a good character. You end up really caring about what happens to him, and I love that they leave it up to you
Right.
to try and think about what might have happened to him
Yeah.
after all this.
Yeah, I totally agree with your outlook, and I guess I'm enough of a romantic that I'd like to think that Cornelia may allowed Eli to find his heart again, or open up his heart again, and like you said, that he would actually, start a new family or whatever. But I love that they leave that up to you. Like the best, this, as you said, Jesse, this is adult art. They don't spell everything out for you. They don't put it out in plain view. They leave it up for you to decide for yourself. And to me, that's the best kind of art. And it's the old, like if we knew why Mona Lisa was smiling, it would take all the mystery out of that picture. And this story leaves you with mysteries or story threads for you to decide how they end. And I just love that. So I thank you both for your responses. That was that was really good. So that wraps up the series. I just have to say for myself, um, I've gone on record many times saying I love bittersweet stories. I love the ending of Lord of the Rings. The Middle Earth is saved, but the elves have to go, and so does Frodo. I love those kind of stories where there's victory with a price. This story is exemplary of that, and it also shows to me that as well crafted as this show was, I mean, the obviously the scenery they chose worked fantastically. The direction, the lighting, the writing, which is art in itself. There's all that, but the real magic is something that you can't control, and I think it really comes down to the leads in the show, Emily Bunt and Chesapeake Spencer. Or Chesapeake, how do you pronounce his name? I can never. He's got such a weird first name.
Chasky?
Chasky Spencer.
I'm not sure. I've
Yeah.
never heard it.
Yeah, I've never seen him in anything else, or at least I don't recognize him for anything else. But the two of them just had that extra oomph that you can't quantify. Like they just had that chemistry between every time the two of them were on the screen together. It was just magnificent, electrifying, poignant, just every emotion out of the spectrum when they were together, and I just love their scenes together. So yeah, it's a bit sad, I think, that in this like, you know, on the one hand, in this age of streaming, we probably never would have got a show like this filmed. But because there's just like an ocean of material out there, I really feel like this one's being overlooked and missed. And that's most unfortunate, because I really do think this is a real diamond of a show. So any closing thoughts before we sign off on this one, Karen?
I'm really happy you chose this for
Good.
us to watch, even though, you know, we say it's outside what we normally would watch. It was something well worth seeing.
Yeah, maybe we should redefine what we're watching and just say we like good stories, regardless
Right.
of whatever, you know,
I
genre
agree.
format it's in. So
I agree,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I would have not watched this.
Mm.
There are, you know, one of the things you, especially in today's entertainment lifetime, is I've accepted the fact that there are brilliant books and series and
Mhm.
movies that I won't get to see.
Yeah, and that's a big perceptual shift for people of our generation, because
Yes.
for a time we could keep on top of everything because there was only
Yes.
3 networks and
Yeah.
only so many books, but now it's just
Yeah.
exploded.
Yeah. There are a lot of definitions of heaven. Getting to eat all you want without gaining weight,
Yeah.
getting to spend time with all you love, getting to know the answers of mysteries of things you want to know. And all those are valid terms of if there is an afterlife, and we all hope there is. I get, but to me, having the unlimited time to watch everything I want to watch would probably be right behind spending time with family that I've lost, would be right up there.
Right.
I would not have watched this, and I am so glad that I did.
Mhm.
It is so well done, and I love Emily Blunt, the actress. So
Yeah.
you would have thought that would have been enough, but there's just too many other things that you run into.
Yeah. Yeah. She
and
was the only
especially-
reason that I watched it.
Yeah.
Like Emmy Blunt,
Yeah.
she's always good. Let's watch
Yeah,
this.
and you know, and I'm not complaining, but you know, there is I am trying to stay current on certain news shows I'm watching.
Mhm.
I have a Doctor Who episode, either classic or modern, that I watch every other week. And like this week, we're going to be talking about a first Doctor episode, and it's 6 or 8 parts. So I mean, it's 2 or 3 hours. You know, I love our Babylon 5, but that's an hour that I need to watch, and then I work for a living. So
Mhm.
you just select you who, and I have so far, everything that we've picked during this, you know, our one-offs
Mhm.
has been just a joy, each of them different and unique. And so I'm really excited what we're going to go through next. But this, as much as I love Devs, as much as I love Midnight Mass, and I love Station 11, that's why I picked it, I might pick this as my favorite because I didn't know what I was getting into.
Right.
Right? Like I knew, oh, okay, we're going to have a Western romantic, but that isn't what it is, but it was. And I think from expectation setting and then a payoff, this might be so far the most satisfying of what we've kind of done together. I'd be curious what you guys think.
It's up there for me. I don't know. Yeah, it's between this and Midnight Mass, I think. Yeah.
Karen?
Yeah, samesies. This had a lot more real world type elements to it than Midnight Mass. So I tend to put them in a different category. And this was a lot of things I know in real life tied into what happened in this show. You know, I know a lot of the history of all that, you know, being from California and growing up learning about, you know, the migration west and all that. So I think maybe this would be the top in overall. And if it comes down to genre, I think Midnight Mass might just edge it out a little bit.
Well, and now that you're thinking it, because I don't like horror, maybe Midnight Mass would be top because it was so well done. So luckily we don't have to rank, but
No.
I guess
There are two different flavors too. It's really hard to compare
yes.
them.
Yeah.
It comes down to the characters, and in both cases, well, most of the characters in Midnight Mass die, so that makes it kind of hard. But this was quite well done. So
absolutely.
So that wraps up our look at the English. And maybe the weakest thing about the series is the title, but not in the context of when you're watching the show, but I think just like as something to leap out at you on a website page, it wouldn't probably grab your interest. But that's it. I want to thank you both for all your comments and thoughts on the series. I'm glad you enjoyed it as much as I did. I was really nervous about Karen because maybe I've had the stereotype romance novel vision of what you like as a story. So I'm glad you really like this.
Now you've learned more about me.
That's right. So it's what a great discovery. That's excellent. So now I'm going to even pick even more out there stuff next time.
Good. I will not subject you to a romance novel.
So is it your turn next, Karen?
Yep.
Have you decided yet? Or
would you guys be opposed to reading like a comic book series, even if it's just like, a mini series?
If I can get a hold of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I can probably,
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
We'll talk about that offline, but yes.
Okay. And what was the series?
I don't know yet.
Oh,
there's quite a few that I could pick.
All right.
So
well, there you go, folks. We're going to leave you on a cliffhanger as to what we're talking about next. But until then, people will probably be interested where we can find my wonderful co-hosts. And Karen, where can they find you?
I'm at Oliveria on Twitter, and my blog is alliestuff.com, and the landing page at my blog has a lot of good information.
Very good. Jesse.
I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. You can see me ranting and raving about all things politics and pop culture, and you can catch me talking. I'll promote Set Lusting Bruce, my Bruce Springsteen podcast, because as we're recording this, I'm less than 3 weeks away from going to see Bruce live in February. So I'm very, very pumped.
Very good. And you can find me on YouTube at Lose Reviews, where you'll find these episodes of JKL Media, and these will be up shortly. And you can also find our Babylon 5 podcasts there, my writers' interviews, and Stephen King podcasts. And until next time, the balcony is closed, to steal a line from another show. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
And scene.
The proceeding has been a JKL Media production.